Out of every console I have ever played and or owned, which is a lot as of now, the Xbox 360 was one of the best. I never really was a Nintendo kid, or heck, even an Xbox kid. I only really grew up with the PS2, and I never had that many games that would be like that impactful for me, except the one. But that's for another time. When I had my Xbox, I only had Kinect games. Yeah, any of you guys remember the Kinect? One of the greatest things to... Oh my kidding, that thing sucked. It may seem like I'm stalling to talk about the main topic of the video, but trust me, I'll get to it. One day at my cousin's house, who had a lot of 360 games, he was having a sale and he allowed me to get 2 games for $5. Those 2 games were Halo 3 ODST and the game I cared about the most, Gears of War 2. Despite the fact that I've pretty much never heard of those franchises when I got those games, I fell in love with them. I'm gonna save my thoughts on the second game for when I talk about it, but it made me a Gears of War fan. Even with that, and going through 3, Judgment, and these games, I never played the first game until recently, and I was surprised with how well it held up. Well, a lot of the game holds up today, while some other stuff I'll talk about later. Also, a very quick disclaimer. I originally made this script like way more quicker, like a more fast summary of what was going on, so some areas might be a bit weirdly paced, but I decided I would go through this game like I did with like Doom Eternal and all those other stuff, mostly for completion's sake, and so I can make sure I can talk about, everything about this series. So, with all that said, hi, my name is Solar, and this is Gears of War. A lot of time, a game's opening likes to explain what's actually happening, as a way to get into an understanding of this game's world and where you're gonna go through. Gears of War, however, is something completely different. We start in a jail cell where we see a bunch of these creatures going crazy for an inmate, when something opens the door to break the person out. This is Marcus Phoenix, the main character of the game and the next 2 going forward. He was sentenced to prison but was later released with other people to fight in a war. Of course, things don't seem so simple, as we also meet Dominic Santiago, or Dom, who's his best friend, and was the one sent in to get Marcus back into this war.
Welcome back to the army, soldier.
This is pretty much a tutorial level, and it helps to get players adjusted to this gameplay of third person. Many major shooters have usually been first person, and yes, Gears of War wasn't the game that invented it, but it was the game that helped popularize this genre. And for a game that was released in 2006, this gameplay feels incredibly good. Movement, shooting, everything feels like it has a weight to it. Another thing you'll notice is that this game with the setting is that it's
Nice.
It's pretty dark. This is what I would say is the most well-known aspect of the Gears setting. Things are bleak, there's not a lot of color, and even if there is color, sometimes it's muted. It delivers more of a horror setting, at least in the first game. While I will admit, I am personally someone who likes more vibrant settings, I can't put into words how much I think this works incredibly well for the Gears games, before they basically made them into nothing in the Coalition games. Getting back on topic, we also get introduced to the enemies of the series, the Locust Horde. The Locusts are brutal and massive. Even with what could be called a standard enemy, the drones are on average 6 feet tall and 265 pounds of pure anger and muscle. I love these guys, but we'll talk about them in a second. As we barely avoid getting killed by this corpser, we meet Delta Squad, more specifically Anthony Carmine and Min Young Kim. I hope I pronounced that right. Despite previously being court-martialed, it's clear that people know of Marcus.
Hey, are you the Marcus Phoenix? The one who fought at Aspio Fields?
Yep.
Wow, cool!
Not really.
When landed, Kim talks to Colonel Hoffman, who clearly isn't a fan of Marcus being back in the COG, but we're gonna ignore that for now as the team gets attacked. Kim is told that the COG have a weapon called the Light Mass Bomb, but to use it effectively, it'll have to be shot into the Locust base. So our goal is to find Alpha Squad and obtain the Resonator, which is a device that will help visualize the Locust tunnels. Throughout the game, you'll see why the Locusts are terrifying enemies. They have no remorse as they will kill literally anyone, just like Carmine right here.
See?
The further we get into the game, the more enemies we see, with the Wretches as an example. It's the only quick and fragile enemy of the Locust Horde, but they can easily swarm someone with multiple Wretches. We have other enemies as well, like the Boomers that carry larger weapons, but usually say what they're going to do before they actually do it, making them kind of goofy and I love that about him. The Cedars latch onto the ground and launch Nemesis, which are homing enemies, so it's like a living AA gun. There's a lot of variety in the enemies, and for the first game, they're pretty good. The drones also have different classes like Sniper, Grenadier, all that, and a cool detail is that they can actually be identified by small things, such as the Grenadiers who don't wear chest armor. In the first act, we meet two new characters. First is Augustus Cole. For how bleak this game can and will get, he's a great balance of humor, but in a way that understands the situation and works with the seriousness in the game. He also has some great lines.
Who loves you, baby? Yeah, group hug.
We also meet Baird. What makes him likable is how much of an asshole he is. He pretty much bickers with Marcus throughout any situation, and it's incredibly fun. He also has some great lines.
How's it going, Baird?
Oh, it's bullshit. Somebody here figured out that Cole played thrashball. Now it's all, oh, Cole Train, tell us all about that play again. And, hey, number 83, sign my shirt. Where the hell are you guys?
After meeting with Baird, we get the best scene in the entire game. A Raven that was going to get them out is shot down, the Locust begin to barrage the crew, and this guy, who is Rom, is leading them, and what happens next and the background voice in this section really sells the Locust as a true enemy.
I am pleased with our progress. I understand they have located another squad. Our strategy remains the same. Cut off the head of the snake, and the body dies. We will win this war. It's only a matter of time.
Yo, we're here for Alpha and the Resonator. Come on!
Let's go!
The next part introduces one of the toughest enemies in the game, the Berserker, and her introduction is still effective even to this day. This is the most unique enemy as she cannot be hurt by regular weapons and can only be killed by this Hammer of Dawn, and we'll talk about that weapon later. The Berserker is also blind, so it senses movement by hearing someone's footsteps. It's a great moment whenever you get attacked by a Berserker, as it changes how you play the game to take an enemy down. As we talk about the Hammer of Dawn, why don't we talk about the weapons? We of course start with the most iconic weapon in the entire series, the Lancer. It's a pretty cool rifle on its own, but what makes it unique? It has a chainsaw attached to it. It's an icon of the Gears series, and when the co-founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates, saw the Gears of War demo, he said that he loved the chainsaw. Further research showed that there were people who genuinely didn't want the weapon to be shown in the demo, or even in the game as a whole. I can't imagine Gears without the Lancer or the other weapons in the game. Another unique aspect of the gameplay is that you can hold two primary weapons, a pistol, and a grenade, but you have to switch to what you want to use. Basically, you can't throw your grenade with, say, the right bumper like you could in other shooters. You actually have to select it. We also have some other weapons that fit into the city. The Gnasher is a shotgun that can cause serious damage when you get close to your enemies. There's a snub pistol and the Magnum, which are actually pretty cool pistols. The Longshot is a single shot sniper rifle and is the weapon that made me love getting headshots. Finally, we have the deadliest weapon, the Hammer of Dawn. The weapon itself does nothing other than pointing a laser, but keep that laser still and you can kill pretty much everything on sight, but it does have some downsides. The weapon can only be used when the skies are clear, or as clear as they can get, and the satellites that cause the orbital strikes have to be online. There's one more weapon I actually want to talk about because it has been something that's been bothering me for years, and I'm not joking when I say that, the Hammer Burst. On its own, it's pretty alright. It's the primary weapon for the Locust and it's a 6-burst rifle, but future games would pretty much always remake the weapon. In Gears 2, it's an auto rifle where you can shoot it as fast as you can. Gears 3 and Judgment made it semi-auto, but you can aim down sights with it. Then in Gears 4, it becomes a 3-burst, and Gears 5 changes it back to a 6-burst. This thing has had so many reworks, I don't understand why. It has been bothering me since I got into this franchise. Back to the story, we need to head to the Lethia Emulsion factory so we can use the resonator more effectively. But with our situation, we'll need to improvise how we'll get there, leading us to the next act. The Gears games usually like to use an act system to help start and end story sections. The beginning of the game and killing the Berserk was Act 1, Ashes, and now we head to Act 2, Nightfall. Don suggests that the best way to get to the facility is to get a vehicle from the Stranded that he knows. The Stranded are the people who don't want to associate with the COD or were affected by a bunch of the wars, so they basically live on their own. As Marcus makes Cole and Baird stay behind for reasons, we should talk about the voice acting. For a series that later on has some fantastic voice actors and voice acting, even in the Coalition games, the first game's acting is all over the place. So many of these lines sound like they were done once and without any sense of what the situation in the story is.
You! Traitor like you doesn't deserve to wear the uniform.
It's crazy to say this when this game has some absolutely fantastic voice actors. To start, Marcus is voiced by the legendary John DiMaggio, who I know as Jake from Adventure Time. Yeah, the surprise I got when I saw a video of Jake singing Bacon Pancakes and then Marcus telling someone to go to hell was probably the biggest whiplash I ever got. Baird is voiced by Fred Tatasciore, Kim is voiced by Robin Apkin Downs, General Rom is voiced by the D. Bradley Baker. You don't hear a lot of him in game, but what is here and later on in Rom's Shadow is really, really good. The voice acting does get better in the sequels, and I'll definitely talk about it more later on. During the beginning of Act 2, the sun sets and we get the Krill, enemies that will shred anything that isn't under light. This leads to the level design, which is actually pretty interesting. There's a lot of diversity with how you go through a level in this game. One level you need to use propane to light your way through the darkness. Another you need to use an APC with the light mounted on the top to avoid the Krill. Another is you having to go through a mine with minecarts. If I'll give anything to this game, it's definitely something I didn't expect in my first playthrough. After getting the APC out, we head to Act 3, Belly of the Beast. The beginning part really nails the horror aspect well, especially with one of the new enemies, the Lambent Wretches. They act just like regular wretches, but they're full of this emulsion stuff and blow up. Another thing to note is that their scream is pretty loud. The best thing about this act, however, is Baird's dialogue.
Screw you, man. Get down here and see how much you like it. There's room for one more. It's a party down here.
No thanks.
Keep moving. We'll see you at the carts.
In general, Baird is the best character in this game with his attitude, line delivery. I can see why him and Cole were always paired since they bounce off each other very well. But we make it into the Emulsion factory and it looks horrifying, but it works. What doesn't is the Corpser fight. Corpsers are the main Locust enemies that dig through places so the Locust can invade areas easier. Here, the boss is kind of a pushover. All you have to do is damage its stomach to damage its mouth, which will push it back. Then you shoot these clamps, and the Corpser falls. And I will admit, this shot is awesome. So before we finish this act, what is Emulsion? It's an incredibly valuable fuel found in the planet, which, by the way, the series' planet is called Sera, which reverse is Ares, and Ares is the Greek god of war. Very clever. Anyway, Emulsion was found to be more powerful than stuff like gasoline and fossil fuels. It was so powerful and demanding that everyone wanted it, and the COG went into a war with a faction called the UIR, or the Union of Independent Republic. This would become the Pendulum Wars, which lasted over 79 years. All of this for some fuel, and as we'll learn in later games, Emulsion is more than what you can see. And another fact, after the Pendulum Wars, there was peace for 6 weeks. Then, what began the Locust War, aka Emergence Day, happened. We find the Emulsion factory surrounded by Theron guards. These are the most advanced versions of drones and are more aggressive and a lot smarter. They can also wield lancers, and since you couldn't duel, this makes them even more deadly. But even with that, Delta Squad initiates the resonator, and despite how calm they are when they're heading back up, they rush out and they can finally rest. But it's not that easy. Despite the fact that the resonator worked, the tunnels were too big to get an entire mapping out, so we'll need something else. Baird chimes in on this thing that shows better results of the Locust caves, and Cole's response is perfect.
This is bullshit.
Now learning that this information came from Adam Phoenix's house, Marcus's dad, we have a new objective. I want to add in that while I really don't like the game as a remaster, I much prefer this scene that plays in Ultimate Edition where Rom actually listens into the COG radio with a helmet instead of, well, him just executing someone. Now we head to Act 4, Long Way Home. This is my least favorite act in the game. It's nothing truly bad because it's still overall fun. It's just that I got kind of tired once I got to this section because it felt more of a slog, especially with some of the enemy placements, which really annoyed me, especially inside that house. So I'll just talk about the story bits here. We enter Adam Phoenix's old laboratory and we find the mapping of the Locust to be way bigger than originally thought. So with having to grab the data, we get out before we get attacked by this thing.
Robot! Go!
Now we make it to the last act, Desperation. The train that carries the Lightmas bomb is going to be intercepted by the Locust, but Marcus and Dom were able to get on, and we head to my favorite section of the game. Not only do I think the level design is really good, but I love the use of the Nemesis and how their ink makes the sky look like it's the end of the world. I also think this is where we're introduced to the Reavers. They're flying beasts with two Locusts that man its weapons. They're really cool, but I love how the death is unintentionally hilarious. The body stays there for a second before it falls. What also helps is the score. As someone who loves Gears of War 2's soundtrack to death, and who really likes 3 and even Judgment scores, the first game is actually not that bad. While I would personally say it's the weakest score, it's still very good, and the composer Kevin Ripley did a great job with making the score different from most games, and making it unique to the Gears series, being, I don't know, more dramatic and desperate sounding. I'm not good with describing music, but this track playing in the train section is one of the best examples of that. We get further into the train, and at the end we not only get a fantastic skybox, but we get something that honestly infuriated me, the ROM boss fight. Even after going through this game multiple times, I still don't like this fight. ROM is surrounded by krill, so you have to throw grenades to get rid of them for a few seconds, and that's how you're gonna damage him. The process can either take a minute or a few seconds, and it's kind of annoying how inconsistent this fight feels. But with ROM down, Marcus deploys the Lightmas bombs, it works, and the Locusts are taken out, ending Gears of War.
So, what are we doing tomorrow?
Earlier today, your Gears successfully deployed the Lightmas bomb. We have destroyed the enemy stronghold. This war has exacted a heavy price from all of us. It has torn our world apart. But you have my word that we will rise again.
They do not understand. They do not know why we wage this war. Why we cannot stop. Will not stop. Why we will fight and fight and fight. Until we win. Or we die. And we are not dead yet.
I must admit, I am surprised how well the game still holds up. While I have some personal gripes, I see why this game was a massive success and why it was seen as one of Xbox's best exclusives. If only I could say that about the recent games. So with that done, we reached the end of the video. I cannot put into words with how excited I am to talk about the second game. I really don't want to spoil my feelings, but this game is honestly one of the most important games I've probably ever played, and I'll let you wait until the video comes out to see what you think about it. Anyways, have a great day, and I am going to rest because this script has taken me way longer than it should have.